Hello. Well, 1 year has ended, and another one is beginning with its usual challenges. The past is still present, and we're still in the pandemic. There are some signs that may be improving, if that's the word, in that the new variant, seems to be much more contagious, but far less dangerous than its predecessors. That might signify that the virus is adapting and settling for some kind of symbiotic relation with its host. At least I hope so, because this has been a rather disruptive time. The isolation has really broken up many things, and it has also brought across the tremendous relevance of human relationship. How entangled, how bound, interdependent we are. We might have felt lonely before, but now we know what it means to miss other people in a very real, vital, non egotistic sense. That life is relationship. And therefore, if relationship is not there, we are not really alive. So this isolation has worked against that, but it has also perhaps made us more aware of the significance of something that we took for granted. That's another thing that we do, that we take things for granted and we don't really value them as we should. But there is also this question of change, right? When a year ends and another begins, we feel that opens up a gap, a portal to possible change. We know that change is necessary in our own lives, individually as well as collectively. That the world is not what it could be. I'm not even saying what it should be, because then you enter into that good old contradiction between the ideal and the real. The ideal standing for the projection of the real into its opposite. So no, let's not do that. Let's just look at things. But we know that we have a responsibility for what is happening. We know that mankind is still very much stuck in old patterns of behavior, of tribalism, of division and conflict at home and abroad. So that is the real challenge. We have known it from the beginning, that where there is conflict, there is really no wisdom and there is no love. So that's a tremendous field in which we need to work. Can we be wise enough to bring an end to conflict with its sorrow, which is what is marring even the cooperation that we need at the moment to bring this, to tackle the global pandemic? There's too much division of nations, of the wealthy and the poor, of ideologies and religions, and all that sectarian mentality that seems to have been permeating the whole history of humanity. But every crisis is an opportunity. And this is an opportunity that we can miss, as usual, by dint of insistence on continuity, or we can take advantage of or ride on the wave of that opening. That disruption itself can be the means of opening on up to a different way of looking at things. And in terms of that, it seems to me that we are at a crossroads. I think we've been hearing this for a while now, but to really begin to feel it, and I feel it, we are at a crossroads in the whole world. We have gone outwardly so much, and we have achieved so much in that direction. The ways of technology, the ways of communication, progress, industry, social organization, even cooperation at much larger, in terms of much larger groups. Globalization has had its great advantages. But we know also that the power that science and technology have given us, and that facilitates so many things in medicine and every other field, right, are also tools. The power itself is being used by a psychology, by a mentality that is still not truly cultured, not truly awake to the full responsibility of change within. Krishnamurti used to say that the crisis is really not technological, economic, or environmental. It's not outward. Those challenges do exist, so there's no denying them. There's no denying the challenge of a virus. There's no denying the actual situation that we face in terms of climate change, or the ongoing vast disparities between rich and poor in the world, or even within the so-called advanced societies, right? Those are genuine issues. But when you look into them, you realize that all of those phenomena are the result of human activity, of human values, and the way we organize ourselves in terms of those. So if there is to be outward change, there needs to be also the corresponding inner transformation. And it seems to me that the world has gone outward so much, we have more than we need in many regards. And our ambition just keeps going for the more. But that is not going to answer the question of what it means to be free, what it means to be whole, what it means to really cooperate, not just with each other, but with life as a whole, with nature, with the cosmos. So, in my view, we need to turn around and take a good look at ourselves. It seems to me that this crisis, this present challenge, is such an opportunity. The outward is not answering the questions, is not hitting the spot of true fundamental human need, which is for love, which is for intelligence, compassion, wholeness. David Bohm, the great scientist and friend of Krishnamurti, used to employ a metaphor to describe the relationship between the particular and the general or universal, which is, the metaphor was of vision. He distinguished, and apparently this is how it's done in physiology, between the focal vision, which looks at an object and identifies it. I say, there is a painting at my back, right? And so on. So I focus on that, right? And I see the image, or I focus on myself, and I lose then the rest. So there is a peripheral vision also, which gives apparently the real context for the focal vision. And in medicine, there are some diseases of the eye in which one can lose the peripheral vision. One of the results of that is that then one is not able to focus. My understanding of such a metaphor is that in order to really act properly in the concrete, you really need a global vision. You need to have a peripheral vision because that gives you the context and therefore the meaning is contextual, of one's actions and being in the world. It seems to me that looking at the inner, at the psychological, is part of that global vision. Because in human action, in the human world, the inner, the psychological, is what is controlling the outer. Technology is being employed by psychology, by a certain mindset with its values, mostly of greed, ambition, and this culture of the more, which is bringing about really destructive effects. So in order to really bring about the change that the world needs, and that this new year is calling for inevitably, not just at the personal level of my doing a little more exercise that I've been doing up to now, or seeing about changing, getting rid of the clutter in my house, or whatever it is that we need to do or we want to do, all those good purposes that the list that we make or don't make for ourselves in the new year, we need to consider the global implications and our responsibility for it. Because like Krishnamurti used to say, you are the world and the world is you. You may not be the world physically in the sense of you're here and somebody else is there, but psychologically we are the world because the structure of consciousness is shared by all humanity. It is one stream of consciousness and not separate consciousnesses at all. And it is there where our fundamental action takes place because the inner invariably overcomes, controls the outer. So to change the world, we need to look into the psyche that is bringing about such chaos and why, to understand it, to have an insight, to take a global picture of our lives, you see, to contextualize our very existence. This is what I have proposed, or I'm proposing to do with the course I set up, the online course as a journey into Krishnamurti's teachings as the reading of this book of our own consciousness, of humanity, of the overall context of our lives. And what does that involve? Well, it involves simply looking, learning to look, learning to perceive, and looking precisely at the chapter by chapter of our existence and going from the outer to the inner. That's the main point, right? And that has not been done. And we might as well make a beginning, because I think all this makes sense. It is logical, it is sane, it is also free of dogmatism, free of authority, free of dogma, belief, and sectarianism of all sorts. This is the most universal thing, encompassing and involving all of us as human beings, not as this or that or the other. No other label is necessary in this inquiry. It's humanity facing itself, if it can. So we start looking at conflict, which is the great challenge in life. Right? Not conflict, just violence, obvious violence, but the inner fragmentation, the quality of division between one person and another, right? The isolation is not just brought about by the virus, but by our own self-centered activity. As Krishnamurti used to say, where there is division, there must be conflict. So there you are, right? You have a tremendous challenge right there in our own immediate environments, but is also applicable overall. This is empowering because you as an individual realize that you're not impotent in relation to the whole phenomenon of the world, because the seed of what's happening in a larger scale is there in oneself, in one's own immediate environment. One's own greed is the same as the greed as the others. And one's violence is the violence of the world. And we move into examine the causes of that conflict. We move into relationship, which is where our lives are really truly invested. But we know that there, right there, we are directly involved. Our whole emotional, psychological, biological being is the result of relationship and is the maker of relationship and the determinant of it. If we don't understand properly the factors of such as attachment, the search for security, domination, and so on, dependence, that we bring to bear on these things, we won't really understand the meaning of relationship, whose ground, in principle, is love. We deny love with our approach to relationship. So we have to look into the psyche that keeps on driving this great world into this chaos, keeps us driving humanity to the cliff. This is very important. So we have to examine thought, memory, desire, which plays such an important part in our lives, and the values we give, and the escapes that we engage in so systematically from ourselves. To come home to ourselves is really the challenge. And we're going to see whether we can do that. There are deeper dimensions to that, because we have to touch then on the question of time. Psychology is time, is the past, persisting and insisting in its own continuity of what it has inherited from experience, and then reproducing itself through further experience, thus keeping us bound to the limitation of memory and time. So the question itself is there as to whether that we can live in such a way that knowledge and time may have their place as functional entities, functional tools, but we can be living in contact with the timeless dimension, in a quality of meditative perception that transcends the limitations of the past, and therefore awaken to the real deep dimension of beauty, of truth, of goodness, of compassion, and maybe of that which is sacred. So this is a journey which Krishnamurti undertook and described in his teachings, and which I propose to trace in this course, the book of yourself, together with those who want to join. So this is an invitation. If you want to join us in this journey. I will be discussing other things later, but this is just the invitation. Okay? So if you want to join, you can go to thebookofyourself.com and take a look. Alrighty, I hope this year will bring a bit more light. Especially, I hope we will be lights to ourselves, and therefore lights to the world. Be well.